For people in high tech and innovation and new technology products, Canada has a bit of the same problem that Russia has. We're very wealthy in oil and minerals and natural resources. So a lot of investors would prefer to put their money there, not in some risky high-tech thing, because I can drill an oil well and get lots of money coming out. But somebody comes to develop software and they say, well, the asset goes up and down the elevator every day and goes home. It's not a hard asset. So financing, when you have a very resource-rich economy, sometimes is more difficult to raise money for high tech. And that certainly was a problem in Canada during the early years. And I know it's a big debate right now in Russia. You know, how much effort do we put into innovation and things like Skolkovo versus how much money do we keep putting into natural resources? And so that debate does continue. Okay, now I'm going to, my background is I've been creating smart and intelligent communities for 20 years. And prior to that, my background has all been in high tech and telecommunications, starting new companies, and that sort of thing. So let me lead us through here. And I'm going to talk about strategic community alignment and moving from either Smart City or Intelligent Community 1.0 and on forwards. And it's all about competitive things. I'm going to start off by just talking a little bit about the process of automation and why we're making the same mistakes now that we made 40 years ago. And then how do you leverage a smart city strategy, the importance of innovation centers, building on models and measures, and community collaboration. How do you make that work? And then the economic and social roles of advanced communications infrastructures, fixed and wireless. And I was asked by the center here to comment on a few other things as well. And one, they asked about procurement strategies and practices, because the last project I was involved in as a senior executive for 5 years is one of North America's largest urban revitalization projects, which is Waterfront Toronto, revitalizing big area of what Toronto's waterfront, and I'll describe that as well here. Let me just talk about the process of automation. Typically, over many years, every time we come up with a new technology, what we first do is just automate the old process. Doesn't matter if it was a spinning reel or what it was. For example, a TV camera. When TV first came out, we just put a camera aimed at the radio news broadcaster. So the broadcaster sat there, and in English we had this phrase, talking head. So we just saw the talking head. It took a long time before we moved to the new model of TV news today, like CNN or some other big news stations, in Russia as well. Many screens, we moved them around. When we started in IT and communications, automating our companies in the 60s with digital computers, first of all, we automated inventory control. Then we did sales processing, and then we did payrolls. So in other words, we automated the old functions, and we justified them by getting rid of jobs. It took until about 1989 when some people at MIT University said, you know what, all that money we're putting into automating functions in companies, we're not considering the strategy of the company. Where are we trying to go? We should align the investment with our broad goals. And they called it strategic alignment. And so then everybody started to talk about strategic alignment of systems to overall strategies. Well, the idea, the phrase smart cities first was introduced in 1990. And for many years, and today even, people think, I'm going to have a smart city if I automate the traffic. If I automate some other thing, information from the government. So I automate maybe a little bit of education, but I'm just automating different things. I'm not doing an overall strategy. And so the Intelligent Community Forum is another organization based in New York that said, we should do this within a strategy. And so they started to have an annual competition of people, communities, cities and towns every year, who now, 400 of them, all send in their application to be named the Intelligent Community of the Year. And so Singapore has won, Taiwan has won, Stockholm, Eindhoven, many, many cities, large and small, have won this award. But what they said was, you should do it within a strategic framework. So just because a city has all kinds of technology installed doesn't make it really intelligent. And so that is an important consideration. And so we call it strategic community alignment rather than just strategic alignment. And the idea is aligning all your innovation initiatives and everything else under a broad strategy. And we'll talk about that too. So why do we get into all this? There are only three reasons. Everything we do, you could put it either into an economic category, an environmental category, or a social category when you think of everything we're doing in the intelligent community way, and we're driving it through innovation. Now, I'm not going to read these off, but broadly, increased jobs, new innovative companies, new entrepreneurs, new kinds of investment. If we do it effectively, we can get great economic benefits. There are a lot of things with new standards, new district energy initiatives, many kinds of products and technologies, new kinds of cladding on buildings that will improve the environment. But it's all about social as well. When cities start off and say, well, either the tech guys are going to make us a smart city, I always say wrong. They don't know a lot about that, some tech people, I can say that. It's social. There's a big social dimension to a really intelligent community. And so you have to have a balanced strategy. But let me say another reason why you want to do it. Don Tapscott, a lot of authors, everybody is looking at the future saying, we have this tsunami, this wave of new technology that's allowing us to change society in terms of the way we interact, the way we deliver healthcare, the way we deliver education services, new kinds of collaboration. What we're trying to do is come up with a new model. And Professor Clayton Christensen at Harvard has written a lot of books on disruptive innovation. So if you can disrupt today's model, the way digital cameras disrupted film cameras, the way these little either floppy disks or the little fobs we carry disrupted other kinds of disks, then you can capture a whole new industry. Well, we want our communities to be competitive, to create more jobs. So we need to try to implement something that creates disruptive innovation in our city. And Christensen identified technology enablers, value networks, and low-cost business models. When you're thinking of your strategy, think about how you can get those three things, and you will help to create disruptive innovation. What you also have to do, if you're trying to create a disruptive model in healthcare, well, you sometimes have to change the regulations and standards as well. We're trying to introduce some kind of new medical service into a home, the way they do in Sweden. Well, you have to change the standard so a doctor can get paid for being at the other end of a TV network and diagnosing your problem. Today, in many places in Canada, the doctor can only get paid if he actually has a visit with somebody. So that's an example of changing a standard. Now here is what I was talking about strategic alignment. A lot of smart cities, Smart City 101, they just automate these particular things: education, healthcare, ecology, government, traffic, but there's no real relationship to them all. And so moving forward to 2.0, 3.0, you've got to have strategic community alignment. So you're really trying to link all these things together, and that's what's giving you the great advantage in all of this. So it's not just about technology and just automating these things, it's about doing it in an integrated manner. Now, there is a way to do this, and it's been proven over the last 20 years. It's like you build a house. Well, there's a few things you do. Yeah, you have to build a foundation usually. You probably want to have some drawings, an architecture, and there's some processes. Well, there's the same thing for smart cities. The model, the international model, is an open architecture model. It's a 5-layer pyramid. It starts with place, infrastructure, the collaboration ecosystem, solutions, and life. And then you'll get printed copies of this, but this is a description of what it's all about, but leadership is very important. So there's a model, and there's also a whole series of processes. There's governance at the center, and then, I won't read them all off, but design, build, plan, and so on. And communications is really important when you're doing these things. A lot of times, people start a new initiative, and I think it's not criticizing things out of school. Friends at Skokovo will agree with me when I say, you guys all started, you had a piece of land and you focused on that. You forgot to talk to the neighbors about what's going on and why is this going to be good and why are we going to run trucks with dirt through your neighborhood for the next 10 years. So some people start getting angry about it. Very important to communicate with the outside world when you're doing this and get them involved, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. We had a Russian slide in there just to save other people from translating our slide. So benchmarking, self-assessment, and measurement. If you're going to do it, you should benchmark. Where are we today? And then you can benchmark as you move forward and do a self-assessment. Now, I'm the chairman of iCanada. This is the 14th civil association I have helped to create. And you had some questions about how do they work and what's the problem and everything else. I've always had a motto, maybe it reflects our Canadian government, rather than first of all starting by saying to the government, here's a good idea, give us some money, and then you could wait 5 years. We say, if you have a good idea, start a parade, and if it's a good parade, every government in the world wants to be part of it, every politician. So get the parade started. And as David said about Waterloo, the guys and the women that were the entrepreneurs and the investors put the money into things, and then governments get involved. And that's a bit of a Canadian process, but you have to handle it carefully so somebody in government doesn't think you're trying to take over. You remember I mentioned the 5-layer model? Well, these are the 5 layers, the elements: place, infrastructure, collaboration, solutions, and life. And so in iCanada, what we've done with IBM, Cisco, and 17 people is come up with a measurement system that's quite open and anybody can use it. And so we've created subtopics below each of those layers, and then each of those layers we continue to go down, and we actually have 1,000 things you can measure. But most people just start at the first layer. And so it's important because you want to know where you are and you want to be able to communicate. So these are those 5 layers again. And another way of showing the actual measure is on what we call a spider diagram. Let's say that's 5 points out here. That's really good. And you get only 0 points in the center. And so when people do these assessments, this is a live case where West Parry Sound, a region north of Toronto, municipal employees rated it one way, see the brown, residential, just citizens, rated it a different way and you can see the differences based on different people in the communities, what they think of what they're doing. Now, if I showed you the youth slide, generally these are all older folk. Youth that say we're good here and we're not any good over there, environmental stuff. And so the youth and the adults are quite different views. The point of all of this is we're getting tools together for collaboration. Now, there is a difference in the cultures between Canada and Russia with respect to the government's issue in having collaboration and how does collaboration really work. It's just two different societies at the moment, there's no question about it. But it's important and we use it a lot. And so we're dealing with a region of communities right now. We had 200 people together just coming up with their visions of the future. And one sector of society was just business and tourism sector, because this is a beautiful rural area on lakes. And the question was, what would it look like if they had a rich broadband implementation, because it was very weak on broadband. Well, this is a company in Canada called Power Noodle that's great for getting brainstorming and bringing it all together. So they ended up with just a few ideas, vision statements. We'll have interactive marketing. We'll have year-round tourism customers who will come because of our better broadband. We'll be able to access world tourism markets and that sort of thing. The point was it's a collaboration initiative in which just that one little sector brainstormed 43 different ideas of the future and ended up with 13 that they were going to really work on. A different group of people than did all the measurements in the present state. And the things needed for the future were very similar coming out of these two different groups. Very important kind of collaboration if you want to get the community involved on one of these initiatives, because you're creating a new model and a new way of doing things. It's not about, we're going to do this for a year and now we've solved the community. Eindhoven won the Intelligent Community of the Year Award in New York 2 years ago. It took them 6 years. 3 times they were the top 7 community, but they didn't win the award. The next year they said, forget it. And then they came back and they were the top 7 for 2 more years, and then they won the top award. And the mayor made a good point. He said, it's not about winning the award, it's that we've changed our way of life and it's a new way of governance in the 21st century. So there are 7 steps for getting started. These are listed. Benchmarking is important. Creating an community advisory council. It's not just the economic council. It's not just the tech council. It covers everybody. Creates a concept plan, a roadmap, then the strategy for ultra broadband. You've got to have the highway of tomorrow to create the community of tomorrow. One community, Chattanooga, Tennessee, a small community in the United States, was the first one to have fiber to all homes. They issued a bond, put it in. Within 3 years, they had $4 billion of new investment coming in from 3 major corporations, Volkswagen, Airstrom, and Amazon. Very important. Creating working groups and then finding ways to have innovation centers to help to drive these things. Now, I'm going to talk just a little about Waterfront Toronto. It has followed these steps for the last 7 years, starting with a dirty Portlands, and this year it is one of the top 7 intelligent communities of the world. There's the city of Toronto, and this is urban transformation through disruptive innovation. All of this land and way around to some more that I'll show you in a second was old docklands, derelict. You never walked down there. It was too dangerous. And this is a vision of it in the future. So it was land that's everything kind of draw a line right from there over there. And that's 5 kilometers from the end of there back in. So this is a big piece of land. It's the largest urban revitalization in North America, creating 20,000 new jobs. Over 100,000 people are going to live there. $34 billion, but only $4 billion of public money. All the rest is private sector investment. I was asked to talk about how does the procurement and RFP process work at Waterfront Toronto. And so all of these precincts are, broken down. And so after we've done all of the planning and the block diagrams, if we say, okay, we want this building, we want bids for somebody that wants to build that building. So we first do a request for qualification, because when we started, we were really pushing new ideas in environmental standards. Not all developers could handle them. And so we didn't want to work with all kinds of bidders, so we first said, just tell us your qualifications. And then we narrowed it down to say, well, only 3 or 4 of you can bid on this. And they would put in a request, answer a request for proposals, and we would pick the winner. Separate board doing it and all the rest of it. But the interesting thing is, the finalists, we show everybody what the finalists have offered. And so they can see them, they can comment on them. We don't give them the price, but we get a lot of collaboration, and that's what's very important on all of this. But in our case, even if you win the deal to put up a building, you have to then pass through a design panel of 9 eminent architects. And egos get really bruised there, because now they're saying, well, your design's nice, but it could be improved. And so it's improved the design. And we had the first one, and now the City of Toronto has introduced a design review panel, and other parts of Ontario and Canada as well. Now, I'd just like to mention, why are we here? We've created the Ernst & Young Center for Smart City Innovation. And the idea is that it's a global center. It's based here in Moscow, but we're bringing to Russia and the CIS the world's leaders, thought leaders, and experienced leaders in this whole area through this distinguished lecture series and through others. And so all this shows is we've got international connections with universities and other organizations. Canada, in a sense, is a bit of a living lab for Russia, too. We've got challenges in distance. We've got a lot of remote areas. How do you get rural communities going? And so there are things doing that we're starting to collaborate with Russian communities as well. We're connecting with Russian scientific research and educational institutions, interfacing with business vendors and business associations, and really using that to bring together for our clients and potential clients. And that's the idea there. So once again, what is a smart city and an intelligent community and all the rest? We can call them whatever we want. First of all, it's all about making the most effective use of communications and technology in order to come up with disruptive innovation and new models in healthcare, in education, in collaboration, in business, new kinds of infrastructure, very advanced broadband infrastructures, new ways of delivering government services and interacting with the government. So it has social elements, and there are lots of names. Consultants like to have their name because they sound like a better name. Cisco and IBM like smart cities. The Intelligent Community Forum loves intelligent communities. It's really all about having a strategy that ties it all together using strategic community alignment and avoiding the mistakes we made all through the 60s, through the 80s in business, and just doing these separate things. In other words, tie it all together, and that answers that particular question too. So that this just says, let's get started. Thank you.